Hello, welcome to my shop. This is Chris with Custom Creative Carvings, and this is part two of my story. Where did I come from? Where am I at now? What's going on? Today we're actually gonna take a leave from the shop because right now we're here in my nice big 25 by 25 shop with my baby, and this is not where I started. While this is a great place to be, I didn't start here. So we're going to go back a little bit, not only in time, but in space, because I'm not even out here. So we're going to go and look at where I came from when it came to CNC and creating. Because I didn't start with wood CNC. In fact, I didn't even start with wood at all. So my beginning in CNC started with Fusion 360 and designing different stuff. Here we are back at the beginning. Now this is technically not the beginning because I didn't even own this house. Now I own this house, so we've moved the beginning to here. The beginning is right here behind me. This is my Ultimaker 3 E, I believe it is. So it's the extended. This is the extra tall one. So it has a little bit bigger platform. I knew I liked designing and I wanted to be able to get my creativity out there into the third dimension. And so I started looking into 3D printers. They were all the rage at the time. And it was amazing. I did some research and found that the Ultimaker was the best. And it had a price tag to go with it. So if you're looking at 3D printing, this is a great machine. They actually have the 3 still available. And they've got a couple of others and a couple upgrades and whatnot. Right now I'm printing a ring. So just like this one, I'm going to bring this down where I've got good lighting. So just like this one, this is a 3D printed ring. And this is what I'm printing right now. So as you noticed, while that print head's moving, this is a very slow process. It was one of the downsides I didn't realize. Now, I was able to do some pretty cool stuff with it. Made a lot of different rings, made a lot of different trinkets and whatnot. But you run into some shortfalls. When you start making smaller stuff, they get fragile, and that's necessarily true with anything you make. But the big shortfall that I ran into with the 3D printer is it is very slow. And so to justify the time, I had to make very elaborate projects. Now, I did make some stuff. This is a project that I'm still working on. This is a actual cosplay type futuristic weapon that my son and I made, or we're in the process of making. There's the grip. So this is a full-size 3D printed pistol. And this is a huge project. And what I ended up finding was, by the time I get done making that, there's no way I can justify my time for the cost of the piece. I was using Fusion 360, great piece of software. It is the software that I started using when I got my first CNC router, but it is a very heavy-duty software designed for building elaborate 3D parts. It's not designed for CNC. While it can be used for that, that is not its initial purpose. I kind of look at it like I need groceries, so I'm going to go hop in the 18-wheel semi that's parked in front of the house and drive 2 blocks to the grocery store and pick up groceries in that. Can I do it? Yes. Is it going to be efficient? Is it going to be the best way? No. I could take my motorcycle, I could take my car, I could take my SUV, and any of those would be better. Now, if I needed to go pick up 10,000 pounds worth of wood, I couldn't take the motorcycle. I couldn't do those things. I would have to take either a SUV with a really big trailer or the semi. It's the right tool for the job. And Fusion worked great for 3D printing because you are designing stuff that you will build. It is very intensive software, but there is a lot of support on the internet on how to use it. There's different forums, so it can be learned pretty easily. It just does take some time and some practice. So this is where I started. Didn't make a whole lot of money on this one like I wanted to. This thing ran me over $4,000. So I'm glad it's still something that I use, but it did spend a couple years parked and it has not gotten the love that it should have. In all the time I've been going, you can see there is still a very little bit of work done there. So this is where I started. I had the laptop, built everything on there, and it worked. It still does work. As you can see, it just runs a spool of filament, pulls it in, heats it up, melts it, moves it around, and you get your product. The reason I went with the Ultimaker is because it can actually run 2 different spools on one project. So I can run ABS and CPE, or 2 different plastics at once, because it does have the 2 print heads, and it just switches back and forth those on the fly. Fantastic feature, and I think there's a few more machines out there with a much lower price point that have that capability now. So that's where I started. From there, I came over here. This is my Universal Laser Systems 360. So this is a CO2 laser. It has a 12 by 24 inch bed, so I can cut out a decent sized project on that. It works great for engraving. It works great for cutting thin wood, and it's done some really cool projects. I'll throw a couple of those up. Here's a small one that I've done. This is just a 1/4 inch piece of MDF that I was able to do the vector cut and cut out the outsides and do rasters and vector lines. So it does very, very fine, tight work, which is great. I still use this on a regular basis. Again, I bought it used, but this is about an $18,000 machine new. That laser tube in the back costs $1,800 to recharge it. Very expensive process, and it's also actually pretty slow. This coin right here, these take about 4 minutes to make because of all the rastering, and then the cuts going through 1/4 inch MDF are actually pretty slow. Now there are lasers that you can get for your CNC router, and they are a great option if you're going to be doing rastering like this. If you're trying to get the cuts where we're going to go through that 1/4 inch ply, be careful, because while I can do this in one pass with my 45 watt laser, take a 7 watt laser, and well, 7 is a very small fraction of 45. It's almost 1/7. So I would almost plan on doing this in 7 passes, going very slowly. So be cautious of that. If you're just doing rastering right on the surface, that is something that they're very good at. They're very good at marking up the little stuff. One thing that I did a lot of, I did a lot of dog tags with the laser. And with a metal marking compound, you can actually mark onto metal. Cannot hold metal, but I can mark onto it. So with this, that is actually chemically bonded to the metal, and so it stays pretty well attached. I can just cut through the anodization, and that works really well, happens a lot faster, and there's not an extra charge for having to do the addition. Cutting acrylic works fantastic for cutting acrylic. If you get, and this is 1/8 inch acrylic, that would probably be not too big of a problem with a 7 watt CNC laser. And one thing I really like is this one will show the detail you can get with these. So this is actually a little QR scanner that I designed and made just as a tag that can be put somewhere. My thought with these would be really a fun one for geocaching, because you can put a code on there and then stick this there and people can come and scan it. Very fine detail work. It's a great way to go. So CNC is so much more than just routers. A Cry-Cut is a CNC machine that cuts vinyl for stickers. A 3D printer is a CNC machine. It uses computer numerical code to move ahead and melt the filament and create something. It is an additive CNC process. Lasers, routers, Cry-Cut, they are subtractive. They take something away to make what they are going to make. So that is where I started. It gave me a lot of good insight into what the capabilities are, what the processes are, how the functionality works. And I got my feet wet in all three fields. And people ask constantly, should I start with a printer? Should I start with a laser? Should I start with a CNC? I went with 3D printer, laser, and then CNC. I would not recommend that method of going with this. I would start with a CNC. My first CNC was I believe a 3018 Chinese CNC, and it was merely for proof of concept. So here's a project that I did on my 3018 CNC. It is just a CNC routed flag. So I took and routed the channels and the box, but then I came back and put it on the laser and I rastered the words on here. And so I was able to use both machines for that. And this was kind of the beginning of my CNC routing, was just that little 3018. And I took that opportunity to see if it was viable. On the laser and on the 3D printer, I started out with really expensive machines. And, you know, that was something that I don't know that I regret. I'm glad I got the Ultimaker, not the Ultimaker. I'm glad I got the Ultimaker. That's fun. I'm glad I got the Universal Laser. I'm glad I bought the best of the best. I see people constantly talking about their Chinese laser that they got for $1,200 or $300. And what they're saying is, hey, I'm having a hard time with communication with my machine. I'm having a hard time with connection. I'm having a hard time with it not doing what I tell it to do. This machine has never not done what I told it to do. There was one point in time where I got an error that I did not understand, popped up on the screen and said, you've got this error, and it was something about a bulb. And I kind of freaked out because that's a big, expensive bulb. I called the factory and got a hold of a person in really quick time. I was kind of surprised how quickly I was able to get a hold of somebody. And they're like, oh, okay, the problem is you've got a 9-volt battery that's dead. You need to open this little hatch, change out the 9-volt battery, and you'll be good. So relieved. It's a like $1.99 fix to what I thought could be a $5,000 problem. But the baseline is this machine has never let me down. It has always done exactly what I've wanted it to. It has always communicated extremely well with the software. The software I use on this is Corel. So I use Corel Draw, and not a cheap piece of software, and I paid for upgrades on it, which is also not cheap, but it is very user-friendly. I'm very happy with Corel, how Corel works on this. With the Ultimaker, it runs Cura as its post-processor. It's an open-source post-processor. People have used it for lasers. People have used it for CNCs. I used it. It actually comes with Ultimaker, and I've been very happy with Cura as a post-processor. So as far as software, I am happy with Fusion 360. It is free if you're just a hobbyist, but expect some work with it. I upgraded to Vectric when I went to a bigger CNC. I used Fusion 360 when I started with my 3018, and it worked. But when I went to a more expensive CNC, I did upgrade to Vectric, and I absolutely love how Vectric is designed to work with the CNC. It is very simple and very effective. So as we look at the different processes, I would tell you if you're looking for advice on where to start, I would say start with a small CNC router. The benefit of a CNC router is you can do a lot more 3D work, so you can get a lot more in depth. It gives you a lot more options, and it can work much more quickly because it doesn't have the limitation. As I've been going, I actually started this little ring, I want to say I started it a few minutes, maybe 5-6 minutes before I started this video. I'm 15 minutes into this video and there's still 4 minutes remaining. So between heat up and everything else, it's a 20-minute process to make a little ring. So to try and equate that into, now it is fire and forget. I do like that. I can turn it on and just let it run. The downside with that is if you leave it unattended, it can break loose from the heated build plate, and then you've just got this ball of molten stuff that you're gonna have to clean up later because it makes a huge mess on your print head. Pain to clean up. The other thing is, if there's an error halfway through this, there is no starting over. If I have an error halfway through my system on the laser, I can stop and I can recut that same thing and not lose what I've already done. It may waste time, but on my CNC, I can stop in the middle of a G-code, something goes wrong, I can hit the emergency stop that, fix whatever it was, and then rewind and start that from the place that I left off. Now, if the wood was damaged, well, sometimes you're just out of luck there, so it's not an always thing. But I would say start with a CNC. Start with the CNC router. And then should you spend an extra $700 and get a laser attachment for your CNC router? I would say not when you first buy it. Learn your router, learn what you like about your router, and then upgrade your router to a bigger router, and then get your laser. Now, if you're starting with a decent size router, start with, it's not your first exposure, absolutely get the laser. But they are two completely different animals, and it's another process that you've got to learn. So by all means, start with a CNC. Find something you can get a good deal on. Buy used. Chances are, if you're spending $300 on a used CNC, you can turn around and sell that as long as you don't damage it for $300 2-3 months down the road later when you're ready to upgrade. If you put $1,000 into a CNC machine, take care of it. You'll be able to sell that thing for $800-900 down the road when you're ready to upgrade bigger. Next video, I am going to talk about the progression that I would recommend as you buy CNCs, where to start on a CNC. Obviously, I'm in a spoiler alert right now. Start with a cheap $200-300 CNC that's used, that you got from somewhere else, that you got from someone, probably Facebook or Craigslist or KSL, something like that. Use it, get at least a little bit familiar with it, because if you crash a $300 CNC doing catastrophic damage, guess what? Not nearly as painful as if you do catastrophic damage to a much larger, more expensive machine. That being said, one of the advantages of the larger ones is they're a lot more self-preservation. They have a lot more self-preservation, a lot less likely to do damage to themselves, but they still can. So thanks for watching. I appreciate you hanging out this long. If you see something that you'd like more detail on, whether you want me to go more into detail about the 3D printing, more detail about lasers, you know, I still use my laser a lot, so I do expect to see a lot more videos in the future about the laser. And of course, we're going to get really heavy into CNC routing as we move forward over the next couple of videos. So thank you for joining me. Thank you for sticking around this long. Feel free to make a comment below. I love to hear back from you. I will respond to every comment I get. And if you liked the video, if it was informative, give me the thumbs up. If you want to see the next one, hit subscribe, ring the bell, and we'll see you in the next video. This is Chris from Custom Creative Carvings. Thanks for watching.
Wow.